Clara Stevens stood in the crowded terminal of Los Angeles International Airport, gripping her daughter Emily's hand tightly. She was exhausted after a long journey across the city and through the bus stations, and her shoulders ached from carrying their only suitcase. Her clothes were simple, worn jeans and a faded blouse, nothing like the well-dressed travelers rushing past her with designer luggage and expensive phones. Emily, her 6-year-old daughter, tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, I'm hungry," she said in a small, tired voice. Clara gave her a tired smile and nodded. "Just a little longer, sweetheart," she replied, trying to stay calm. They had been on their feet for hours, and Clara was starting to worry they were running out of time. Clara glanced at the crumpled ticket in her hand. She was trying to find gate B47, or was it B74? Her eyes blurred, and the stress of the last few days caught up with her. She had worked double shifts for months, saved every penny, and even sold her old engagement ring just to afford the plane tickets. The job interview in Chicago was her one big chance. It was the opportunity she had worked so hard for, the chance to start fresh for herself and Emily. But now, standing in the middle of the busy airport, she wasn't even sure if she was at the right gate. Her heart raced, and she could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. All the effort, all the sacrifices, could it all be for nothing? She had to get this right, not just for her but for Emily too. Clara reached the airline counter, her hands shaking as she tried to explain the problem to the employee. The words felt like they were slipping away, her mind clouded by exhaustion. She had been standing for what felt like hours, and now, just as the stress of the situation seemed overwhelming, she realized that her flight details were all wrong. The gate number she had written down didn't match the one on the board. The flight had already taken off. Her heart sank. "Oh no," Clara muttered under her breath, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She looked at Emily, who was clutching her hand and staring up at her with wide, confused eyes. Clara wanted to cry, to scream, but she didn't have time. This interview was everything. It was her one chance to change their lives. She couldn't afford to miss this flight, and now, it seemed like the universe was working against her. Before Clara could fall apart, she felt a presence behind her. A calm, deep voice cut through her panic. "Are you all right, miss?" a man asked. Clara turned around, startled. Standing before her was a tall man in a well-tailored suit, his posture confident and his expression kind. His eyes were warm and understanding, as if he had seen her situation before. He looked like someone who was used to making things happen, someone with power and control. Clara opened her mouth to explain, but her voice faltered. I missed my flight," she stammered. "I don't know what happened. I'm trying to get to Chicago for an interview. This was my chance, my only chance." The man nodded, as if he understood exactly what she was going through. "Let me see your details," he said, his tone gentle but firm. Clara hesitated but handed him the crumpled ticket, her heart racing. He studied it for a moment before looking at the airline employee. "This isn't the right flight," he said, his voice carrying an air of quiet authority. "Can you help them get on the next available one? I'll cover the costs." The airline employee was taken aback but quickly nodded. "Of course, Mr. Hawthorne," she said. Clara didn't know how to react. She had never encountered someone like this before. Who was this man and why was he helping her? The man, now introducing himself as James Hawthorne, smiled at Clara. His eyes were calm, but there was a hint of something behind them, a kindness mixed with sincerity. "I saw you over here struggling. I'm happy to help," he said. Clara blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "I can't accept that," she replied quickly. "You don't even know me. I can't just take your miles. It's too much." James chuckled softly, a warm, reassuring sound. "It's not charity, Miss Stevens. It's an investment in your future." He gestured toward Emily, who was now tugging at Clara's sleeve, and added, "You're a mother, doing everything you can for your daughter. I admire that. You deserve a chance." Clara's chest tightened, her emotions in turmoil. She had been taught her whole life to never accept help from strangers, to be cautious about people who were too kind. She wasn't sure if she could trust him, but his calm demeanor and genuine concern made it hard to say no. I appreciate it," Clara said quietly, "but I don't know if I can." "You can," James interrupted gently. "Let me help. We all need a little assistance from time to time, and I'm just offering mine." After a long pause, Clara nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. Maybe she was right to take this chance. Maybe, just maybe, this was the break she had been waiting for. "All right," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." James gave her a reassuring smile. "No need to thank me. Just get to your interview and I'm sure you'll do great." With that, Clara and Emily were quickly booked on the next available flight, with James Hawthorne's miles covering the cost. Clara still didn't know much about him, but one thing was clear. His unexpected kindness had just given her a chance to turn her life around. As Clara and Emily settled into their seats on the plane, the noise of the bustling airport faded away, and Clara finally allowed herself to relax, if only a little. Emily, exhausted from the long day, had already fallen asleep, her head resting on Clara's shoulder. Clara looked out the window, the city lights of Los Angeles fading into the night. She took a deep breath, trying to shake off the stress and anxiety that had weighed on her all day. She couldn't help but replay the events in her mind, the missed flight, the kind offer from James Hawthorne. It felt like everything had suddenly turned in her favor. But as much as she wanted to believe it, Clara knew she couldn't let her guard down too easily. James noticed her quiet contemplation. He sat beside her, reading through some papers on his tablet, but he could sense that Clara was lost in thought. After a few moments of silence, he spoke gently. "It's been a long day for you," he said. "You've got a lot on your plate, don't you?" Clara blinked, surprised by how much he seemed to understand her. She looked at him, and for the first time since they had met, she felt like she could open up. She had spent so many years keeping her struggles hidden, never letting anyone see how hard things had been. But something about James felt different. Maybe it was the kindness in his eyes or the way he had stepped in when everything seemed to be falling apart. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing it," Clara began, her voice low. "I've been working 2, sometimes 3 jobs for years. Waitressing during the day, cleaning at night. And now I'm trying to get this job in Chicago. It's the only chance I have to give Emily a better life." She paused, glancing down at her sleeping daughter. "I just want her to have more than I did, you know? A safe home, a good education. I don't want her to grow up like I did, always worried about money, about whether we'd have enough for food or rent." James listened intently, his eyes softening. He had been quiet for a long time, thinking about her words. When he spoke, his voice was calm and thoughtful. "I understand more than you know," he said. "I didn't grow up with much either. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. She did everything she could to make sure I had a chance at a better life. We lived in a trailer park and I spent most of my childhood just trying to survive. But I never gave up. I worked hard, studied whenever I could, and eventually things started to change. I'm where I am now because of all the sacrifices she made for me." Clara looked at him, surprised by his honesty. She had assumed people like James, with all their wealth and success, had always had things easy. But hearing his story made her realize that maybe they weren't so different after all. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice a little shaky. "I didn't know. It's just hard, you know? It feels like I'm always fighting, always struggling." James smiled, a small, understanding smile. "I know what you mean. But sometimes the struggle is what gives us the strength to keep going. You've got a lot of strength, Clara. I can see that in you. You're not just doing this for yourself, you're doing it for Emily. That kind of determination doesn't go unnoticed." Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. It was strange to hear someone speak to her like this, someone who had no reason to care. She wasn't used to this kind of kindness. "That's why I wanted to talk to you," James continued. "My company has a branch in Chicago. I don't know if you're interested, but maybe we could stay in touch. There might be opportunities there for someone like you." Clara's eyes widened. "Opportunities?" James nodded. "You're more than qualified for a lot of things. If you're willing to take a chance, I can help connect you with the right people. It's not charity, Clara. It's about recognizing talent and determination when I see it." Clara was speechless for a moment, her mind racing. This wasn't just about a flight or a missed job opportunity. This was about a chance, a real chance for her and Emily to build a better life. Maybe, just maybe, everything was falling into place after all. The plane finally touched down in Chicago, and Clara felt a mixture of exhaustion and nervous energy. She had spent the entire flight preparing for her interview, reviewing her notes and trying to stay calm. Emily had fallen asleep again, her head resting on Clara's lap, and Clara gently brushed her daughter's hair as she waited for the plane to reach the gate. When the seatbelt sign turned off, Clara took a deep breath, trying to push the anxiety away. She had come so far, put so much into this moment. This was it. This was her chance to give Emily a better life. She couldn't afford to mess it up. As they exited the plane, Clara felt a strange sense of optimism. She had done everything right, bought the tickets, prepared for the interview, and even got the support from James. She just needed this to go well. But when Clara picked up her phone and checked the messages, her heart dropped. The first one was from the company that was supposed to interview her. "We regret to inform you that the position you applied for has been filled internally. Your interview has been cancelled. We apologize for the inconvenience. Clara's hands shook as she reread the message, hoping it was some sort of mistake. But it wasn't. Her stomach twisted in knots. Her eyes blurred with tears. She couldn't believe it. After all the sacrifices, selling her engagement ring, working long hours, leaving her old life behind, everything had led to this moment, and now it was slipping away. She had flown across the country for this job, hoping it would be the turning point, but now it was gone. She felt like she had nothing left. Tears began to well up in Clara's eyes as she stood frozen in the middle of the airport. Emily stirred in her arms, sensing her mother's distress. "Mommy?" Emily's small, worried voice cut through the silence. "What's wrong?" Clara took a deep breath, trying to hide the tears. She didn't want Emily to see her break down, but it was too much. Everything felt like it was falling apart. She had tried so hard, and now she felt lost. The weight of the disappointment was almost too much to carry. James, who had been standing a few steps behind Clara, noticed the change in her posture. He quickly walked over to her, his face full of concern. "Clara, what's going on?" he asked gently. Clara couldn't hold back anymore. She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. "The interview. They cancelled it. All of this, it was for nothing." James listened quietly, his expression soft. "I know this feels like a huge setback," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But sometimes life throws things our way for a reason. This isn't the end, Clara. I promise you it's just a detour." Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But what do I do now? I came all this way. I don't have any other options." James gave her a reassuring smile. "You have more strength than you realize. This is just one door closing. There will be others. And I'm here to help you find them." Clara felt a small sense of relief at his words, though the weight of the situation still pressed down on her. "I don't know what to do. Everything feels like it's falling apart." "You're not alone, Clara," James said firmly. "Things don't always go according to plan, but that doesn't mean you've failed. Sometimes the right opportunities find you when you least expect them. I believe in you." Clara took a shaky breath and nodded. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time that day she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end after all. Maybe James was right. Sometimes setbacks were just a sign that something better was on the way. As Clara stood in the airport terminal, still reeling from the news about her cancelled interview, James continued to reassure her. He had been kind and understanding, offering support when she felt like everything was falling apart. But now, as they stood together in the bustling crowd, James's voice took on a new seriousness. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier," he began, his tone calm but firm. "You've worked incredibly hard to get here, Clara. You've sacrificed so much for your daughter, and I admire that. I see your determination, and it's something I value deeply." Clara looked at him, still unsure of what he meant. She had been overwhelmed by the chaos of the day, but now, James seemed to be leading the conversation somewhere else. "I don't want you to feel like I'm just offering you a favor," James continued. "This isn't charity. This is an opportunity because I believe in your skills and your character. My company has a branch in Chicago, and there's a position that I think would be a great fit for you." Clara blinked, trying to process his words. A job offer? She wasn't sure she had heard him right. She had come to Chicago for an interview, yes, but now James was offering her a position out of the blue. And it wasn't just any position, it was at his company. A company that seemed like the kind of place where people with the right qualifications thrived. "I know it's a big decision," James said, watching her carefully. "But from everything I've seen in you, I believe you're more than qualified for this. Your experience, your ability to balance work and raising a child on your own, it's impressive. You're exactly the kind of person my company needs." Clara felt her chest tighten. The idea of a job at James's company seemed too good to be true. She had dreamed of a chance like this for years. Something stable, something that could provide for Emily and give them a better life. But with all the uncertainty and the unexpected turn of events, she wasn't sure if she was ready to take this leap. "Are you sure?" Clara asked, her voice hesitant. "I don't have much experience in the kind of work your company does. I've been focused on making ends meet, not working in a corporate environment. I don't know if I could." "Clara," James interrupted gently, "you've done more than most people could ever manage. You've built your life around determination and hard work. That's what matters. You don't need a perfect resume to prove your worth. You've already shown what you're capable of." Clara stared at him, unsure of what to say. She had always been cautious about accepting help, especially from someone she barely knew. The idea of stepping into a corporate job, taking on a new challenge, was both thrilling and terrifying. Could she really handle it? Could she take this chance without being vulnerable, without feeling like she was risking everything? Her mind raced. She wanted to believe in herself, wanted to take this opportunity for Emily's sake, but doubt gnawed at her. She had spent so many years doing everything on her own, building walls to protect herself from disappointment. What if this didn't work out? What if she couldn't keep up? James must have sensed her hesitation because he gave her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to decide right away," he said softly. "Take your time. But I believe in you, Clara. And if you decide to take this opportunity, I'll be here to help you every step of the way." Clara took a deep breath, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to think about a future where she didn't have to struggle so much. A future where Emily could have everything she deserved. She wasn't sure if she was ready to risk being vulnerable, but she knew one thing for sure. This was an opportunity she couldn't ignore. The chance for a better life for her daughter was right in front of her, and maybe, just maybe, it was time to trust in herself, and in James. Clara sat quietly in the airport, her mind racing as she replayed James's words in her head. The offer he had made was everything she had ever dreamed of: a stable job, a chance for Emily to have a better life, and the possibility of a future free from constant worry. But it also felt like a huge leap into the unknown. Could she really do this? Could she take the risk and step into a new world, one she had never imagined for herself? She glanced over at Emily, who was playing with a small toy that had been given to her by a friendly flight attendant. The sight of her daughter's bright smile made Clara's heart swell with love and determination. Emily deserved more than what they had right now. More than the long nights of Clara working 2 jobs, more than the constant struggle to make ends meet. She deserved a stable, happy life. As Clara watched Emily, she felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about Clara anymore, it was about Emily. It was about giving her daughter a chance at a future where she didn't have to worry about her next meal or where they would sleep at night. Clara knew deep down that taking this job was the best thing for both of them. "I'll do it," Clara said, her voice steady but full of emotion. She looked up at James, who was standing nearby, watching her with a kind expression. "I'll accept the job. I want to take this chance for Emily. For both of us." James's eyes lit up with a warm smile. "You won't regret it, Clara," he said. "I'm glad you decided to take this step. It's not going to be easy, but I know you have what it takes." Clara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was making a decision that was truly going to change her life for the better. She wasn't just taking a job, she was taking control of her future, of Emily's future. The following days passed in a blur as Clara settled into her new role at James's company. She found herself adjusting to the pace of the office, learning new things and starting to feel more confident in her abilities. It wasn't easy and there were times when she felt overwhelmed, but every time she thought about giving up, she reminded herself of why she was doing this, why she had taken this leap. One afternoon, Clara was in the break room, sipping her coffee when she saw Emily laughing with James. He had taken the time to show her around the office, and Emily seemed so at ease with him. Clara watched the two of them interact and for the first time she felt a sense of peace. James wasn't just offering her a job, he was offering them both a chance to build something meaningful. He was giving Emily the stability and care she needed, and he was helping Clara believe in herself again. Clara realized then that she no longer had to face the world alone. She had support not just from James, but from the opportunities that lay ahead. His kindness, his belief in her, was something Clara had never expected, but it was exactly what she needed. As she stood there watching Emily and James, Clara felt a wave of gratitude. She was no longer just surviving, she was starting to live. And for the first time in a long while, Clara could see a future filled with hope, not just for her but for Emily as well. The new beginning they had been waiting for was finally here. 3 months had passed since Clara accepted the job offer from James Hawthorne. Her life had changed in ways she had never imagined. She had settled into her new role at Hawthorne Consulting, working as a project manager for social initiatives. It was a challenging job, but Clara found herself thriving. She had never felt so valued, so confident in her abilities. Every day she worked hard not just for herself but for Emily, who was now getting the life Clara had always dreamed of for her. Emily too had adjusted well to their new life. She had started attending a new school in Chicago, where she was excelling. Clara's heart swelled with pride as she watched her daughter bring home good grades and make new friends. The small apartment they had moved into was cozy, and it felt like home. They no longer had to worry about where their next meal would come from or whether they would have a place to sleep at night. The security they had longed for was finally within their reach. James continued to be a supportive figure in their lives. He checked in with Clara regularly, offering guidance and encouragement. But more than that, he had become a trusted friend. He had shown Clara that success wasn't just about hard work, it was also about believing in the people around you and offering support when it's needed most. His kindness had opened a door for Clara that she never thought possible, and now she was walking through it with a sense of purpose and confidence. Clara had come a long way since the days when she had been overwhelmed and unsure of herself. The missed flight and the chance encounter with James felt like distant memories now, but Clara knew they had been turning points in her life. If she hadn't taken that leap, hadn't accepted James's offer, she would never have had the chance to build the life she was now living. Sometimes life had a way of showing us that setbacks weren't failures, they were simply detours, guiding us toward something greater. As Clara sat in her small office reflecting on everything she had achieved, a sense of peace washed over her. The weight that had once hung over her had lifted, and for the first time in a long time, she truly felt like she had control over her future. It wasn't perfect, there were still challenges ahead, but she knew she was capable of handling whatever came her way. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Emily's school, telling Clara that Emily had won a prize for her science project. Clara couldn't help but smile. This was the life they had worked so hard for, a life of stability, opportunities, and happiness. Looking out of the window, Clara saw the busy streets of Chicago, a city that now felt like home. Life hadn't turned out the way she had expected, but in the end it had turned out better. Life's unexpected moments, like missed flights, chance encounters, and taking risks, had led Clara to this point. And as she looked at her daughter, Clara knew that the future was bright for both of them. She no longer felt alone in her struggles. The journey was far from over, but now she had hope and the strength to face whatever came next.